Boarding a colony ship called the Hope to be cryogenically frozen and sent off to a faraway colony only for your skip drive to fail and then drift for 70 years only to be revived by a mad scientist is not only the start of the Outer Worlds, but it's also a great way to explain this game. It feels like a game both stuck in time and something completely new all at the same time. The game is both beautiful and yet it feels aged, and yet it's still probably my game of the year regardless, and the reasons are actually quite complicated. Right from the very start, when you create your character, this game shows off that it's a proper RPG by letting you choose special stats which change just how you play the game. Every major encounter throughout the 30-hour-ish story can be approached in a different way. You can run and gun, sneak your way through, or just talk your way out of most things if your stats are that way inclined. Let's start off with stealth, and this is the part of the game that's really split opinion. Right at the start of the game, you're tasked with sneaking past some creatures that are on top of a ledge. Like most games these days, you can use the tall grass to stay out of their sight, and this game is quite clever by making the grass go transparent when you walk through it so that you can see what's going on. Your footsteps make a sound when you're moving, just like in other games like Fallout, so when you're wearing lighter armour or the right mod for your armour, it makes a huge difference. This system really isn't perfect, by the way, as the AI can come across a little bit stupid. They can walk right up to you when you're in the tall grass and have no idea that you're even there. Your companions don't help with this either, as they can be in clean sight, but until you're seen, enemies won't even register their existence at all. When it works though, it really works, and stealth can be really fun and a good way to play the game. Critical hits can work very well in combat, and with the right stats, even strong enemies can be taken out without them even seeing you. In terms of combat, the Outer Worlds really shines with its huge arsenal of weapons and the many ways to use them. From pistols to grenade launchers to even just hitting someone with a stick, the game gives you options. Every weapon can be tinkered with and upgraded as well, with new sights, silencers and weapon effects. These effects range from having plasma spilling out to hit other enemies grouped together, to weapons causing shock damage that affects robots more than anything else. This adds tactics even to your weapon choice. Just picking the weapons that deal the most outright damage isn't always the best way to deal with a situation. There are times in the mid-game where selecting the right weapon for the right situation can be the difference between surviving and dying. Of course, just like in Fallout, your character has the ability to slow down time and hit certain parts of enemies to do things like cripple their legs or blind them. It's not quite the same as VATS, however, as you're not selecting body parts with a chance to hit, but are instead aiming yourself. Moving and attacking drains your bar much quicker than simply standing still, which gives you the time to simply pick your shot or throw your companions in with special attacks. Along with this, melee has also been revamped a little bit with the ability to throw 3-hit combos and block incoming attacks. These hits don't have much weight to them, however, but it is satisfying enough to be a very good combat alternative. Of course, just like guns, these weapons can be upgraded with the many effects being available to them. The most interesting weapons though are science weapons. These weapons have varying effects, from changing gravity to shrinking enemies to make them more vulnerable. These science weapons can also be made much more powerful through perks and give you much more freedom in combat. With all this being said, there's finally the most interesting way to deal with most situations in the game, and that's through the extensive dialogue. Just like in Fallout New Vegas, if your skills match the speech checks, then you can avoid combat in an awful lot of situations. This is done through lying, intimidating, and charm, but you can also use other skills like science and engineering to get past these checks. If all this fails though, in most situations, even just a simple bribe can do the trick. Completing these speech checks also gives you some of the wittiest and funniest dialogue in the game, which at times made me genuinely laugh out loud. However, this isn't the only part of the game that's dark and funny. Just like in Fallout, simply exploring each area can show the many little stories that have made Halcyon feel truly lived in, and the broken society that inhabits it. From someone who's been violently murdered aboard a huge colony ship in a restaurant kitchen, to a crazy guy hiding out in a power plant, hiding from robots and living on small sprats. Everything feels well lived in and part of a grand colony where everything is not as it seems. There hasn't been any devastating event to make civilization fight for survival, or any sort of rebellion to throw over the obviously shady board. This doesn't mean that everything is great in the star system though. The only true neutral territory in the system is the Groundbreaker, and it's falling apart. Monarch is overrun by terrifying monsters, forcing people to build large walls around towns to survive, and Terra 2, the capital of the system, is divided between the ultra-wealthy Byzantium and small towns where people just work and sleep, such as the small town of Edgewater. These worlds each give you a different ethical and difficult choices to make. Even in the first area of the game at Edgewater, you're tasked with destroying one of two settlements with no way around it. On the surface, this is a really easy decision, with one settlement basically being a prison where people just work and have no life whatsoever. Dig a little deeper, however, and you'll realise you're either going to send one group of people back to what is effectively slave labour, or almost certainly sentence the other group to death and starvation. In the grand scheme of things, this decision really won't make any difference to the system as a whole, but it is the start of many. Throughout the game, you are the unknown variable to the corporations that rule Halcyon, and you have the ability to side with any of the factions in the system. This includes the small factions on each planet to the board itself, and this is where your actions and decisions make a huge difference to the system as a whole. Just like in all of the Fallout games, at the end of the game you get a narration telling you what all of your decisions have done to the world. You can genuinely help Halcyon and even save it, or you can be the bad guy and help towards its demise to further your own needs. These kinds of decisions carry weight, and the Outer Worlds lets you know this, with characters telling you just how each decision will affect them in their view. Some decisions, of course, will turn people hostile, and this is a way in which the game really shines. Unlike in Fallout 4, you can kill anyone in the game. This means that you really can choose your own path in every situation. If you don't like a certain faction or town, you can simply wipe them out. This even includes the capital of Byzantium and the neutral Groundbreaker, which can swing the ultimate end of the game in a few different directions. The only NPC that you can't kill whenever you want is the incredible Dr. Phineas Wells, as he hides behind a bulletproof glass in his laboratory. This doesn't mean that you're forced to follow him at all, as the game gives you plenty of ways to betray him by siding with the board, and so you can simply kill him later on. The thing is though, even this isn't an easy decision, as some of the things he does are very questionable, and he can really be perceived as both the good guy and the bad guy. This is a testament to the amazing writing that Obsidian was already known for through earlier titles. Nothing is simply black and white, as every little part of the world has a grey area. This grey area is where the characters in the Outer Worlds operate. Everyone is simply surviving and trying to find a new way in this corporate-controlled world, even if it means breaking a few laws and making some clearly shady decisions. Those who are in power are doing their utmost to keep it, and even manipulate everyone else so that they can keep it, whilst those who are opposed to them will do almost anything to seize it from them. This doesn't mean there aren't characters that are simply good people, as these also exist, and betraying them can prove extremely difficult morally, but if you want to play that sort of character, you can, and this is where the game really looks great. You are not forced to side with anyone at all, not even your companions. Each of them give you quests to complete to further them as characters, but you can go against them, which in turn makes them go hostile against you. If that's not simply your style, then you can simply just ask them to leave the crew at any point. If you choose to keep your companions, however, though, they are incredible with different personalities and amazing combat abilities. Each one can be outfitted with any weapon or piece of armor that you find, so they can be extremely useful in combat and even help improve your own skills. Companions also add to dialogue, getting involved in conversations. They don't necessarily change the outcome, but they are nice and quite often hilarious additions. This happens throughout the story and is perhaps the great way to describe the game. Yeah, you could say it's a nice experience and it's often hilarious, but the Outer Worlds is so much more than that. Put this game on harder difficulties and it's a real challenge. You can replay the game multiple times due to the many different quests that become available dependent upon your choice, and the way Obsidian tells their story means there's always more to see. If I was to have any complaints at all, it would only be that this game isn't really long enough for an RPG at only 30 hours, and at times it feels like the game's been made in a vacuum. Compared to other RPGs like The Witcher 3, The Outer Worlds can feel dated and unpolished with a couple of bugs here and there. This really doesn't detract though from this game, as it really is so far my game of the year. Perhaps it's testament to this year not being that great in terms of releases, but this is a good game no matter what year it comes out. If it was last year, then it couldn't beat God of War, and if it was next year, then I really can't see it being as good as Cyberpunk or The Last of Us 2. This year, however, I can only see one game that could be better than this, and that's Star Wars: The Last Jedi. But that remains to be seen. The Outer World isn't for everyone, but if you're a fan of games like Skyrim and Fallout, then this is probably something you'll enjoy. If you only like open world games like GTA or The Witcher, then you probably stay clear because this isn't going to win you over. So in conclusion, is this the game I was really hoping for, and is it really my game of the year so far? Well, yeah, it is, but many other people might see it differently, and that's okay. It's not a game for everyone, but it still gets my complete recommendation. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Jack, and this has been Games to You.